Now, everywhere is a game, which, I'm not going to sit here and explain it before I start reading the article, because the article does have force here. And this article is written by Polygon. It was written at the beginning of the year, in January 26th, at the beginning of this year, 2017. And it gives a little bit more insight. Now, this is Leslie Benzies, the former president of Rockstar, and Rockstar North, I believe. And he was the mastermind behind, he was the head honcho behind Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto 4, Grand Theft Auto 5, Grand Theft Auto Online. He was behind all that. And then he ended up getting locked out of the, fired or just kicked out of Rockstar, period. And now he's suing Rockstar for $150 million for royalties for GTA 5. But what's interesting about Leslie Benzies is that he's come a long way since he's left. He's got 3 studios now. The last time he spoke, he said he had 30 developers, 30-man team, 30-people team. And so, this guy's moving very, very quickly. And I'm going to read a comment after we talk about this interview that was left on my YouTube channel. So I'm excited. This game has got me super excited. It's got me excited on No Man's Sky levels. It's what he's talking about doing is just, I don't know, man. He's so cryptic and he's so vague, but he's Rockstar. You know what I mean? Rockstar blood. Okay, so let's see. So the question was, what are you working on? Is it a game, movie, book, interactive, transmedia experience? Leslie Benzie says, we are building a video game. Our working title is everywhere. While it has many established gaming elements, we're also including features that games haven't touched on yet. Interesting. I'd like to tell you all the stuff that we're excited about, but I have to keep the specifics under wraps for now. I can say this. We want this game to be less restrictive. We want this game to be less restrictive, than other games. While the game has narratives, we also want players to create their own narratives that include characters with a real personality. If we do this right, we're going to give players the chance to really live out their fantasies, not just the limited fantasies that most games set up for them, and do so in a deeply immersive way. He goes on to say the potential of games is so vast that they're already incorporating many other forms of entertainment and technology. Furthering that process is what inspired us to make this game. So think about that for a second. He's making a game that is also something else. Right? That's exactly what he just said there. And he gets into it even a bit further. I think Matthew Smith here, he chimes in. He's another developer there from Rockstar. He chimes in and he starts talking about it in more detail. It's a game at heart, Matthew says, but not one that fits comfortably into any existing genre, and it definitely breaks out of the existing boundaries of what are typically classed as games. Every 5 years or so, something comes along that significantly widens who's interested in games, gaming culture, and what we even think of as a game. The launch of the original PlayStation, Grand Theft Auto 3, online multiplayer, the explosion of mobile gaming. We have something in mind that is classical gaming through and through, but with some really interesting extra layers that we hope can both immerse existing gamers like never before and bring in a whole new section of society who's never considered themselves gamers. Powerful right there. They want to attract gamers and non-gamers. Interesting. Scratching my head, like literally scratching my head. The next question, how long have you been working on it and how big is the team? Is there a team? Benzie says, we began thinking about this game during the second half of 2016. A couple of great gaming minds joined me, and we've been putting together a team for the past few months. We're using Amazon's Lumberyard, which takes a lot of the grunt work out of making games and leaves our team to concentrate on the creative process. We're able to move production forward in a far more elegant and speedy way than we were able to do in the past. Smith chimes in again saying, we started by stepping away from everything done previously and looked with fresh eyes at what the entertainment industry is crying out for and not currently doing a great job of making. It's very hard when you're up to your neck in deadlines and existing IP to take that step back and see what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and how the world has changed since you started. A full reboot and blank page was incredibly liberating and inspiring. We've grown from a core team of just a few to around 30 now, and currently hiring at both studios, which is now 3 now, but it was 2 when the this interview took place. We filled that blank page pretty quickly, and now need to make it all. The game. How is this project going to be different from what you worked on at Rockstar? Do you want to set up a studio with a culture that's different from Rockstar? Smith says we're a startup, and that will naturally create a slightly different culture. We're prototyping new ideas every day, rather than working on something that's already very well understood, and I think that brings a different type of energy and buzz to the company. That was Smith. Benzie says, everywhere is ambitious, and ambition always gets the best out of people. Here, the Grand Theft Auto games have always been about sending up American pop culture with humor and a healthy dose of cynicism. Is that something you're interested in? This is kind of interesting right here. This really is. Benzie says, everywhere is different from GTA. There may be parts of our game that include satire, but the tone will be very different at times. Our players will be in control of how the tone is set. That is important, because what Smith says here in just a second. Smith says we'll have a distinctive style and tone and plenty of story and characters, but what I find more interesting is letting players create their own story, their own personalities. To a degree, more like a social network. Where what's being commented on or ridiculed isn't written 3 years in advance, through development, writing the story and things like that, but can change hour by hour, because of player input. And if a future president chose to make policy announcements in everywhere, that's something I'd certainly find interesting. And I find what you just said there, Smith, interesting. Could we be looking at a game that is imagine Identity, Grand Theft Auto 5, and PlayStation Home, Sims, all just mixed completely together, and you can play it however you want to. Imagine in Facebook, instead of clicking on somebody's name and messaging them, you have a 3D avatar and a world that is immersive to where you could have you could just do fun stuff, and you get in your car because you see the Joe's online, and you take your car down the road, you go on the freeway, you hop off into a different neighborhood, and you pop on over, and there's Joe. So instead of instant messaging, you got a social network that has like a 3D avatar, and you could attract non-gamers, and maybe there's I don't know. It sounds like they're putting a social network in a game, or a game inside a social network, or they are making a game that can integrate fully Twitter and Facebook within the game in a very immersive way. That's going to be interesting. This entire project is very interesting. Then he says, what do you think your biggest contribution to Rockstar over the years was, and do you want to bring the same thing to this new project? Benzie says, I think I brought order to the chaos of making video games. Having a clear idea of the big picture was very useful when designing. I enjoyed the challenge of making many complicated parts fit neatly together. There is a lot of psychology in design. Everything I did ultimately focused on how players would feel or react to a mechanic in the game. I hope to do that with everywhere. Smith says, I always strive to make sure my team was creatively empowered not held back in making the most detailed character, artistic content as I butchered that sentence possible. And with a leaner team and huge ambitions, I expect that to be more important than ever. This is super, super interesting right here, guys. GTA Online turned out to be a huge success. Is that something that you anticipated? And how important do you think online multiplayer is to AAA games these days? Benzie's replies by saying, I had a hunch that online was the future and hoped that we could make it a success. I'm proud that the foundations we laid worked and are still working so successfully. I see a future, he says. I see a future where we don't reference single or multiplayer. We just choose when we play and if we want to hang out with others or we want to be alone. Just like in real life, he says. Sometimes I want to be with people, sometimes I don't. Or I want them around, but I don't want to interact with them. We're making everywhere as seamless as possible so players won't have to think about jumping from mode to mode, except when it helps the gameplay. Wow. Guys, that is amazing. What are your influences and what games or types of games do you enjoy that might be outside the scope of GTA? Benzie says for everywhere. Benzie says for everywhere. Most of the influences are coming from outside the outside world. Every day I hear something and think we need to have that in the game. I've played a huge number of games in the past couple of years. One that really resonated with me was Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear Solid. He has a great eye for detail. Smith then said, many and varied. I love impossibly detailed personal games like Inside or Firewatch, but I'm equally drawn to expansive open worlds. The original Elite in 1980s probably had the biggest single influence on me. I am also fascinated by the social effects of technology, the way products like smartphones, Facebook, Uber are changing the fabric of society. I don't think we've seen gaming really live up to its full potential yet in terms of social impact. There we go again. Chiming in on the social media aspect of when talking about everywhere. There he is again doing it. I really feel like a lot of us are comparing everywhere to identity, and just because of some of the early things that Benzie said, I think that's why. But I really don't think that this is a. I don't think it's too much like Identity. I don't think it's Identity is like a role play game that's set up so that you could have careers and you could be a criminal and you could role play in certain elements, and a lot of stuff is possible in Identity, and those guys are doing great. But I think this is more along the lines of social network. I really do. It's very interesting, to say the very least. It's very interesting. So are you staying in Edinburgh for this project? Benzie says we have a studio in Edinburgh, Los Angeles, and we have we have news on another studio, which is, I guess that's right. The Los Angeles was what I couldn't think of earlier. Budapest. With current technology, it's possible to work anywhere in the world, and we'll go wherever the best people are. We want to have the best talent and that can come help us create this beast. Interesting. That is the end of the interview there. Interesting. There was a heavy influence in this article when talking about everywhere by always circling around social media. And I don't know. I mean, and the fact that they want to attract hardcore gamers and want to attract non-traditional gamers, people who traditionally didn't consider themselves a gamer, they want to attract those people as well. I want to go to a comment that was left on my YouTube channel, and take this with a grain of salt. 100% with a grain of salt. Okay, so Scott here commented saying, having worked with the IT manager and studio head in Edinburgh, I have a horrible time with that, on supplies for this game, I have never had such a complete, infectious buzz about a company before. It has made my job over the past few months very enjoyable. The potential of this game is huge, and I know for a fact the team and Leslie himself have put a lot into this development already, even at its early stage. It could be whatever you want it to be and then some. Now, that's a big statement, and that stands out to me because if you go to their website, it has their logo or their banner. It says everywhere, and there's stars in space. So it almost I even had the thought that maybe this is a game that you can make it whatever you want it to be. I've thought that. I've never said that publicly, but then all of a sudden this guy, says that it could be whatever you want it to be and then some. So that's very interesting. And then he says, I hope I'm not talking out of turn here, knowing I need to tread carefully with NDAs we have with customers, but I'm really excited at where this development is going. And the rapid growth, spend, and pure talent of the Edinburgh and Budapest studios is filling me with euphoria. and I promise this is going to be big, and I'm proud to be even a small part of it. I stumbled across your video, or this video, and thought it was bursting. I thought I was bursting to share my enthusiasm with you, and all I can say is watch this space. So that's an interesting comment. Then I asked him to come on the show, and he responds not with an answer, but then he says, I have to add, this view is solely mine and not the views of those who pay me. Could be fake, guys. Could be fake, but it could be real as well. I mean, they are hiring people to install these things, and somebody could just search the internet to see who's talking about the game that these guys are making and see if there's any buzz about it yet, and come across my video and just chime in. I mean, it's possible. It really is possible. But the thing that the two things that stood out to me is watch this space, he says, and it could be whatever you want it to be and then some. So interesting there on that comment. Let me know down below what you guys think of Everywhere. And if anybody knows anything that maybe I can't find or whatever, post a link. I'll try and check the spam folder because YouTube automatically spams that stuff. And or add me on Twitter at XXXCobra, or add me, just add me on Facebook. Add me on all those links are down below in the description there, so you can check that out.